Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Cafecito con Colon, where you get to be my extrovert therapist today. Thanks for joining us on this Sábado Gigante, right here coming at you from Casa Colon. Morning, Asia.
Good morning, Brian.
It is a beautiful day out. I've already been outside, taking my breath of fresh air, wore my mask. We're masking 100% of the time now. Good morning, Pammy. Good to see you this morning. Boy, have I got a lot of links, but we're going to make sure I get to you as early as possible because I want to spend as much time hearing about Asia's lived experience and sharing with each and every one of you as we all grow. Dr. McCaffrey coming at us from Condado San Miguel. Welcome, Dr. McCaffrey. Good to see you this morning. Good morning, Ms. Olmsted. You never miss, even when you got a slow start. Grab that cafe. Have a little cafecito con colon. Or as Asia likes, she's having her tea. Very proper. She's having her tea. Asia, you have any crumpets over there? You have any crumpets this morning?
Oh my gosh, I wish I had some scones or something, but no, just tea. But I will say the Old Barrel Tea Company, it is a tea company that's in many different cities in New Mexico. They have one in Ruidoso. They have one in Old Town. I think they have one in Roswell, but they have amazing tea. And they will deliver. They will ship the tea to you. So you do not have to go out and put your health at risk to get your tea. You can get it shipped.
Now, what's that called again?
Old Barrel Tea Company.
Huh. They're out of Durango is where they started. And I guess they have locations here in Albuquerque. That's terrific. And I'm a fan of the New Mexico Tea Company. They got a great story. If you don't know the story of the New Mexico Tea Company, they were on the ropes and basically they engaged with their loyal customers and essentially took out a loan from all their customers and then by not really selling shares of the New Mexico Tea Company, but kind of micro loans from their customers. And then they paid them all back and they stayed in business. They're there on Mountain, but there's another good one for you. Old Barrel Tea Company. That's Asia's favorite. So she's
and you know what? I do love the Albuquerque Tea Company too. And Johnny and I lived on Walter and Mountain. So it's right down the road from our old house. And we used to walk there and get tea all the time. But pre-pandemic times, we used to walk there all the time and get tea. Right. So their cream Earl Grey is really, really good.
There you go. The cream Earl Grey from the New Mexico Tea Company. And today I'm sporting my GW cheer shirt because I wanted to go out and get that exercise this morning with my mask on. And then I'm giving a shout out to Colfax County. We got that coming in from Raton, New Mexico. So thanks to all my friends in beautiful Colfax County, New Mexico. So look, let me get some links up. Today I am using Asia inspired me with her incredibly clear sound. And so I put in my my little Bose headset here, which I always have little challenges getting that with connectivity with my little tablet, but it seemed to work this morning. So give me some feedback there. Let me know how my sound is and we'll go from there. Good morning. Carlos Zozoya is with us this morning. Carlos Zozoya, this is Brian Colon coming at you live from Casa Colon. Thanks for all your little live videos along the way. Carlos is a big fan of Old Barrel too. And Carlos is a food expert. He is a culinary king. He does amazing things in the culinary world. We love him very much. And as a prior guest on Cafecito con Colon, I'm very grateful to him. Hey, here's a cool story. I am ever since USA Today put out that incredible deep story on reparations, I have been taking a deeper dive into their pieces, and I found this good one on USA Today about this company that started after 9/11 with a simple slogan, "Life is still good." And they've now made like $100 million just putting out that logo and that slogan, and just a really good story with their smiley faced stick figure who's on everything from hats to t-shirts and all that. I'd seen that before, but didn't know the story behind the company. So today is New Mexico United Day. I should have actually, in fact, watch, I'm gonna swing around here. There we go. We got the New Mexico United in there. Look at that. How's that, Asia?
That looks good. You should have told me because, you know, Emerson has a New Mexico United onesie. He has
All right, Emerson.
Somos Unidos onesie. So
Somos Unidos.
Yeah, my friend Ben Sherman, who I believe might be on this morning, gifted us with some United onesies for Emerson.
Well, I know Ben is a huge fan and classmate of Asia Brooks, and I've loved Ben for a long time. He was a huge supporter, I think continues to be a huge supporter of my law camp that Alele and I started 20 years ago. And that has been adopted many, many years by the University of New Mexico. Thank you, Dr. Roybal. Thank you, Dr. Jennifer Gomez Chavez. Thank you to Dr. Roybal's program Enlace and the New Mexico Hispanic Bar Association and the Young Lawyers Division. You have been huge supporters. We could have never institutionalized that program that has literally changed lives. Young middle school students who had nowhere to go, had no vision, who had no dreams. My Hito, you know, I don't know, well, I'm going to say it. Arturo Lozoya, he will tell you he was in a really dark place during his middle school years and that the law camp changed his world. And now he's a graduate of UNM. And just an amazing guy. But anyway, Ben just had leaned into my program for many years, and I just love that guy. So there's the New Mexico United landing page. Today's the day. They've got a match at 6 p.m. tonight. You can listen to my friend David Carl, who started the affinity group for New Mexico United. He is going to go on at 10 o'clock this morning on ESPN, the local station, the team 101.7, and he'll do this pregame from 4 to 6, and then the match will start at 6, and then he'll do a post game at like 8:30. So today's David Carl Day with New Mexico United. Thank you, Peter Trevisani, for believing in New Mexico, taking that deep dive with your partners, and creating New Mexico United. Somos Unidos. You have been a bright spot in New Mexico's landscape from the day you announced you were taking that deep dive. So thank you, Peter Trevisani, for rocking it and giving us all something to love and believe in. We love you. Okay, now I've only posted a couple links and I'm already behind now because it's already 9/11. So let's keep going here. This is a good one. You'll love this one, Asia. I mentioned on Cafecito, you know, we're now 7 weeks into lifting up and amplifying beautiful Black voices in New Mexico. And Asia, thank you for saying yes. But about a month ago or 5 weeks ago, I talked about this beautiful, beautiful leadership moment for a university president. Was it North? It wasn't Northwestern. It was North Central University. And he spoke at George Floyd's memorial. And this president, in a moment of seeing the bigger picture, announced the George Floyd Scholarship there, of which $50,000, $60,000 had already been raised. And instead of having a mindset with limited mentality and scarcity, he had a mindset of abundance. And what he did in that moment, instead of raising, literally, because he had the platform, the world was watching, right? That memorial, Asia, you remember it. Instead of having a scarcity mentality, and instead of taking that 50 or 60 grand that had already been given to him and raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, for that particular scholarship at North Central University, he instead challenged every university president in the nation to establish a George Floyd scholarship. What an incredible selfless act. And in fact, I wonder if his board of trustees or board of regents appreciated that or would have said, hey, what are you doing? But instead, he challenged every university. And I am so excited to announce that in New Mexico, and I think they're the first, as Highland leads in many ways, but Highland University yesterday afternoon or yesterday morning announced the George Floyd Scholarship at Highlands. And so I couldn't be more right. I mean, that's so awesome. I love Highlands. In fact, I should have worn my Highlands hat. I think Joe McCaffrey gave me my Highlands hat. Or no, it was the president of the university that gave me that when I spoke there a year ago or so. But it's the one I run in every day, so you can see all the. It's kind of gross. The sweat
all the
marks.
Dirty. Yeah.
Yeah, all the dirty. And it's a white hat with my cowboy on it, the logo. Well,
I think you're representing for everybody today. You got the United, you got the GW, you got it all. Colfax County, you got it all going. So you're doing good.
Thank you, Asia. Thank you, Asia. I love this lady. So the foundation at Highlands announced that George Floyd scholarship. Thank you, KOB4, for covering that. After the death of the murder of George Floyd on March 25th, we have simply been amplifying Black voices, and he has inspired me. He has done, let me just say this, George Floyd changed the world, just like his baby said he would or did. But after watching a documentary this week on Emmett Till's murder, and I realized that what happened 50, 60 years ago to Emmett Till really was the tipping point for the modern civil rights movement, because Miss Till's strength in so many ways, but I think in particular, forcing that open casket funeral where people had to see the incredible, ruthless murder of her son, who was 14 years old. 14 years old, where his eye was knocked out, the other eye out of his socket, his tongue ripped out, cut out. And I can't even discuss it. That documentary is heavy. But what I realized was that George Floyd's murder was the Emmett Till murder of our generation. And it too is not just a flashpoint, as we've seen over the last 7 years during the Black Lives Matter movement. There have been so many opportunities for us to have our Emmett Till moment, and we have missed it. We have not been listening. But we listened this time, I believe. Around the world, we listened. But George Floyd's murder will be that tipping point when we learn to know better so that we could be better and do better. And anyway, there's the scholarship at Highlands. And now I'm way past, and I got all these other links. It's 9:15. Sheesh, I'm a mess.
I'm so glad
ahead,
that you mentioned that, because I have been listening to a podcast, and it's the Girl Trek podcast. It's an organization founded by 2 Black women, and their message is to get Black women to go out and walk, right? Like, your revolution is keeping your body and your mind healthy. And so the organization's been going for a while, but they did a Black History boot camp in June. And so every day they would highlight a different Black woman. And so one of the women that they highlighted was Emmett Till's mother. And so they have this whole podcast series. If you haven't listened to it, it's amazing. They have, everybody from Ida B. Wells to Rosetta Tharpe, the founder of rock and roll, who most people don't really know about, but Rosetta
Correct.
Tharpe is amazing. I just listened to the podcast on her. And so if you, it's just amazing. And I've been trying to walk and listen to them, but they're all recorded. So even if you miss a day, you can go and you can listen. And they actually have playlists for Spotify where they dedicate a Spotify playlist to each woman. And they have articles and they have poetry, and it's really, really a great resource, but it's called Girl Trek.
Excellent. And I posted the Girl Trek landing page on the comments section. So check that out. You'll be able to get to the podcast from there. So that's all set. And I posted a bunch of my other links that I wanted to talk about, but I just got too much into the Emmett Till. And then check out the other documentary that I posted last night that was super, super heavy. I posted on my Facebook. It's worth the 90 minutes. Please do that. And I'll post a link to that as well. Let's just get to Asia, because she is super spectacular. I don't want to miss an opportunity to share a good 45 minutes with her to conversation here. Let me just tell you real quick, look, Asia is that kind of person who has such a confidence and presence that when she walks into a room, not only is she often the only Black woman in the room, she is also the energy in the room. She has a warmth and approachability about her that really is so warm and inviting that it is contagious in positivity. And I just remembered that smile that you can see right there. When I met her probably almost 15 years ago. And I have loved watching her grow, not just as a student leader, but then a leader in the philanthropy sector and service sector in New Mexico, doing incredible impact work in pro bono legal circles. And I have watched her not just become somebody who's passionate about her work, but passionate about being that individual who brings another perspective to the conversation. And she's done that so frequently and so elegantly and so impactfully. It's really been a pleasure watching her grow as a leader in the New Mexico State Bar. She has served as a commissioner for our district, of which I'm a member. She has now been the leader of the New Mexico Black Lawyers Association. She is currently the president. So, Madam President, it's great to have you on. She is like me, you bet. She is like me, a beneficiary of the guidance and the beautiful hand on our shoulder that Ray Hamilton had for as long as he was here on this earth. Ray impacted, I know, Asia and me in a very substantial way. She's a native New Mexico person coming from Hobbs, America. Is that right?
Yep,
Hobbs, America.
Right. That is right.
And Hobbs, and you'll recall that we've had Dr. Pastor Becknell with us, and he's spoken to that region of New Mexico and the Black history there. And Asia is now part of that living history and that legacy of incredible Black leaders that are coming out of that part of our state. She went to Wake Forest University in North Carolina. She got her Bachelor's of Arts in English, but that wasn't enough. She had to also do it in Spanish. She then went to UNM Law and graduated with her JD, her Juris Doctorate, in 2008. She worked as a criminal defense attorney in Albuquerque at the Law Office of the Public Defender, again, being an incredible civil servant. And then she served as the statewide pro bono coordinator and currently is the 2nd Judicial District Court's Center for Self-Help and Dispute Resolution Director. And she is making a difference every day for people in need of access to legal services. And what we know, and having been practicing now for almost 20 years, what we know is that we have an overrepresentation of need in our communities of color for access to legal representation. And Asia has seen that while you have a right to criminal representation in the law, you don't have that same right in the civil legal system.
Correct.
And that is a huge, huge need. And Asia has been helping individuals in need navigate the legal landscape and doing a beautiful job of it. She's got a fantastic husband, Johnny, who is another guy who, when I think of Johnny and when I think of the times that we've been together, I just see Johnny as being that quiet force who is so supportive of his very extroverted and impactful spouse.
Oh, he is supportive, but I don't know about the quiet part. But
well,
yeah, the supportive part, yes, he is.
That's right.
But the quiet part.
I don't know Johnny well enough to see him as other than just being there as a force supporting his bride.
He definitely supports me in all ways, shape, or form, but that man is not quiet.
Oh, well, I have not had the pleasure of getting to know him deeply, but our paths have crossed often. And of course, she's got her beautiful 7-month-old Emerson, who dictates her schedule. You know, I had my first meeting this morning at 7, and Asia got up at 5 to take care of Emerson and spend some good time with him. And we're just thrilled you're here, Asia.
Thank you,
Tell
Brian.
us about Asia's story and give us a little introduction, maybe some data points that I might have missed that you want to share. I know that I didn't talk about that high crown that you wear. That is just, I always say you wear that in your glory and as royalty and a beautiful tribute to your story and your heritage.
Well, you know, I am glad that you mention it because, you know, my hair story, and I know you talked about this with Beverly McMillan a little bit, and the Crown Act and all of that, and the good work that's being done to prohibit, you know, discrimination based on hair texture. But, you know, it's not an easy thing because of some of the, you know, white standards of beauty and things like that. And so, you know, my hair story has been an interesting one. I always had braids growing up. We had this woman in Hobbs who braided everyone's hair. Her name was Earlise. I don't know what her last name was, but she would do these beautiful braids and beads and all of these things. And so, you know, I always had my hair braided as a young person. And so, you know, people, I don't think outside of the Black community really understood the history of braids. And, you know, braids go back to Africa. Like, they're not a new thing. They've been around for a long time. They're a protective style so that, you know, you're protecting your hair. And so, you know, growing up in New Mexico, people would be like, can I touch your hair? You know, what is this, right? Like, this is different to me. Can I touch your hair? Good to ask. Yes, very good thing to ask. But, you know, there were other people who would then ask, you know, is your hair real? Is it real? And I'm like, do not ask that question. Never ask a Black woman if her hair is real. But, you know, it's interesting that it's so different for people. And, you know, our natural hair is feared. It's feared. And, you know, people would think that I'm intimidating and all of these things. And as you know, I'm probably the least intimidating person that you'll ever meet. But I think just based on my looks and based on my hair, people would automatically make these assumptions about me. And, you know, they actually have this implicit bias test. So, you know, Harvard has the implicit bias test that you can do online. They have one for hair. So it's the hair implicit bias test. And so you can take that test and it just shows that, you know, our standards of beauty are centered on white beauty, and, you know, changing that is going to be a struggle, but it's possible. And I think that part of this Crown Act is trying to normalize Black beauty, right? Because Black is beautiful. And I have this shirt that says Black is beautiful, and it's like a slogan from the 70s and even before then. But, you know, it's hard sometimes out there because you don't feel like your hair is beautiful. And I think that narrative is changing, and that's a good thing.
No question about it. And I posted up the Harvard implicit bias test. So if you want to take that and engage with that, it is there posted in the comments. And Asia, everybody out here loves you. We got about 36 folks on here, and I think they've all taken a minute to say how much you are an amazing woman. And David, thank you for joining us this morning. Clarence, we're going to get you on here on Cafecito con Colon. Chief Clarence Smith, talk about another great civil servant. It's good to see you out there this morning. Asia, tell us a little bit about your lived experience. Thanks for that recap. And I did not know about the origin of the braiding actually being a methodology of protecting the hair. And that's fascinating in itself.
Yep. You know, braids, locks, all of these styles that people think are this like new phenomenon, right? A lot of the communities in Africa, that was ways to kind of protect their hair and you know, and to also show the beauty of their hair with the beads and things like that. And so it's not a new, you know, fad that Kim Kardashian started. It's been around for a very long time. And you know, and so like I said, I'm just glad that this normalization is happening. But if you want something, you were talking about, you know, the documentary and something being heavy and deep. If you want to look into a book that talks about these kind of white standards of beauty, Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye is just a phenomenal book. And it's heavy. I mean, it's heavy, but it kind of delves into that topic. So I definitely recommend reading that book.
You got it. That's a great recommendation. Asia, I'm drawing a total blank on the documentary I told you I watched last night. Did you take note of the name?
Unspeakable Truth?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Something. Yeah.
Undeniable.
Sorry.
No, unspeakable.
My brain.
Yeah. All I wanted to think of was the title to Al Gore's deal, but it's
oh
not.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
Yeah. But it was a great documentary diving into this undeniable truth.
Undeniable. Yeah. Undeniable.
Yeah. And pretty amazing. I think it's undeniable truth. But talk to us a little bit about your journey starting with Hobbs America, right? Because I think that's
definitely
an important perspective.
Definitely. Well, you know, my parents were both born in Hobbs, and so I grew up in Hobbs until I was in the second grade. And I grew up around, my entire extended family was there. So my grandparents were there on both sides. You know, all my cousins were there. They lived around the corner from us. It was a very supportive community. I believe that Hobbs has the largest amount of African Americans in, like, if you look at it population wise.
I think that's right.
I think that Hobbs still has that. And so it was a very supportive community. And, you know, I posted about this, but everyone's posting about Juneteenth. And I remember Juneteenth in Hobbs has been going for a very long time, before the hashtags, before all of that. And so it was just a really fun time. You know, the community would get together. There was like fashion shows, there were basketball tournaments. My grandpa owned a barbecue restaurant in Hobbs. He would get out there with his smoker and smoke and grill. And like I said, that was before it became this popular thing. The Black community in Hobbs was doing Juneteenth for a very long time. So it was really great, you know, being in Hobbs. And I think, like, my family really shielded me from a lot of some of the racism and the things going on in Hobbs at that time. But, you know, I really appreciated having my family there. And as I got older, we moved around. So both of my parents worked for ConocoPhillips. And so we moved around when I was younger. And so when I was in second grade, we moved to Big Spring, Texas, which is West Texas, and lived there for a while. And then I think about 4 years later, we moved to Farmington, New Mexico. And so I lived in Farmington. That's where I went to part of elementary and to junior high. And then for high school.
Not the same diversity there that you experienced in Hobbs, at least in terms of the African-American community.
It was a little different. It was a little different. And, you know, it was kind of mind blowing for me, right? Because, I mean, I've always grown up in these very, like, small kind of conservative towns, but moving to Farmington, you know, I was the only Black person in my school, right? So at times. And so that was very different. And there were people who would see me and they had never seen a Black person before, which is shocking, like to the content. It's like, oh my gosh, really? But they really hadn't. And so it was interesting. It was interesting living in Farmington, and Farmington's just, it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful place. And I used to get back up there doing some pro bono coordination with the court up there, and everybody was so amazing and fabulous. But you know, that was a time when we were exploring New Mexico and exploring Colorado and just the beauty of Farmington. But you know, it was different. It was very different. And you know, I actually was looking at the internet, and I try and stay off of Facebook. I try and stay off the internet as much as possible, because I get kind of like wound up sometimes with all of the negative conversations and everything. So I try and stay off of the internet. But I remember I was watching, maybe it was a Facebook video or something last year. And I see this video of this 11-year-old girl being slammed to the ground. And I'm like, and it's in New Mexico. And I'm like, what? So I'm looking and I'm like, that looks like Mesa View. So that was the middle school that I went to in Farmington. And I'm like, that looks like Mesa View. So I keep looking, and it is Mesa View, right? And the video is just like horrifying. It's just horrifying. And, you know, the police officers escalating the situation and escalating and escalating. And then it ends with him kind of body slamming her. And then I think about that, and I think about, you know, I know that the population of Farmington hasn't changed that much since I was there. So I wonder if that girl was the only Black girl in her school and that was happening to her, you know? And so I wonder about things like that. And I know that we have a long way to go. And, you know, I think that all of our communities were very supportive. My parents were very involved in all the communities where we lived, in the African-American community. So I remember them joining the African-American club when we lived in Farmington. We would have parties at our house, and people would come over and bring food and dance. And so they always made sure that we were surrounded by an African-American community, no matter where we lived. And like I said, you know, I don't want it to seem all doom and gloom. Farmington was beautiful. We went to Chaco Canyon, you know, we went to Shiprock, we went to all of these just amazing places when we lived there. And that's kind of, you know, the beauty of New Mexico is it's a gorgeous place. It's a land of enchantment.
That's right. That's right. I appreciate that. Yes, Chaco Canyon, UNESCO World Heritage Site. I think New Mexico prides itself, or we should. No, most people don't know this. Asia, do you know that New Mexico has more UNESCO World Heritage Sites than any other state in the union?
I did not know that. I did not know that, but I'm not surprised, because New Mexico is gorgeous. It really is.
It is. It really is. And I think I think they've even made application to make White Sands a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And so that would be 5, which is amazing. But we've got, you know, Carlsbad Caverns, Chaco, Taos Pueblo, and one more, forgetting the other one. Huh. Sorry about that, but
that's okay.
UNESCO World Heritage.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Lots of great comments here. And Denise is always putting out insightful comments there. But I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about maybe being the only Black girl in school and in most settings there growing up, whether it was in Hobbs or in Farmington, even more so. I wonder if you have any kind of memories that maybe helped create that lens you look through. And I always talk about the lens we look through matters. And because I think that those early years are sometimes when we get the most sharpening of that lens.
Right.
And that gives us our passion. It gives us our passion points. And I wonder if there may be a point or two there for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, you know, when you're the only anywhere, you kind of become a voice for your entire group of people, right? And so I think like in Farmington, I said people had never seen a Black person before, right? So they are going to assume that you are a representative of all Black people, right? And so that's kind of a heavy burden to bear many times, knowing that what you say is going to be projected onto an entire race of people. And so, you just have to be very cognizant of that. I do think that makes you able to speak to people and able to understand people and able to take time to educate people. It also does take a toll on you too, though. That's the flip side of the coin, right? In trying to kind of help people understand who you are and what you are, you also are taking some physical toll and some mental toll on your own behalf to go out and help people understand that. And so I think that was always very difficult. And, growing up, I think people just think of stereotypes, right? They think all Black, they don't think Black people drink tea, right? They don't think that Black people, I don't know, go to the spa.
Right.
Two things which I love to do. But so
Hey,
yes, Black people do those things, right?
Yes, and you always present so beautifully. Maybe all those spa treatments.
Well, I haven't gotten to go in a while, and I'm upset, but I'm not going to go.
Well, you still look great, and
thank you.
Let me just say this: you mentioned stereotypes, and I want to hit something that was driven home on another video I watched recently. It might even be on The Uncomfortable Truth, and that's what it was: The Uncomfortable Truth. And it's an incredible documentary, 90 minutes, worth every minute of your life that you'll give to that video. It's on Amazon Prime for free streaming, and I'm sure you can find it elsewhere. But the idea of stereotypes, I want to just say that you mentioned negative stereotypes, but there is no such thing. Let me be real clear. There's no such thing as a positive stereotype. Stereotypes are just flat out inappropriate 100% of the time, always. As a Jew, it's not a compliment when you say, "Oh, you must be good at saving money." That's not, and if I'm offended by that, it's not fair to say, "Well, that's a positive stereotype." Looking at Asia and a Black strong woman say, "Well, you must be really good at basketball or volleyball." That's not. It's still offensive because you're not looking at Asia for who Asia is. You're not looking at me for who I am. To say that, well, you're Puerto Rican, so you like black beans and rice. That's not, stereotypes are just wrong 100% of the time.
Yeah,
100%.
definitely. And I think, like I said, you do deal with that a lot when you're the only one, right? And it's not spread amongst everyone. It's kind of just like the laser focus is on you. So I can't count the amount of times when people said, "Oh, you talk like a white girl," right? And that's supposed to be a compliment. That's supposed to be, "Oh yes, you speak properly," right? So why are you offended when I say that? And having to then take the time and explain to people why that's not a compliment. Like I said, it's difficult because you feel that you have to explain that to someone, but it also does take a toll on you as a person to then have those conversations. So there has to be a balance there, right? And I was talking with my mom and my sister, and my mom was reminding me of some of these situations in moving around to all of these little towns. Sometimes you get kind of the brunt of it, and so she was reminding me about when we moved, and the automatic assumption was that, we were going to be in special ed classes, right? Even though we have both made, A's basically all of our school career, right? Our parents were not going to be, they were not going to be settling for like anything less than that. So, something like that is just like, you have to try and have a positive conversation and educate people about why that's not okay. And I think you have to hope that you can make some change Those are very difficult things to do because you also have to have someone on the other end who's willing to hear that. And a lot of times you don't have someone on the other end who's willing to hear that. And so, you know, part of my struggle has been with, if people are ready to hear that, I'm willing to have those conversations with them. But if they're not ready to hear that, if they're going to be defensive, if they're going to tell me why I'm wrong, if they're going to tell me why I'm crazy, to make sure that I'm okay as a human being, to save myself and my mental energy and my physical energy, to not have those conversations with people who are not ready to have those conversations. I do think that there are a lot of people who are ready to have those conversations right now. And I think that's helpful. I think that's the only way that we're going to start changing some of what's going on. But I think there's also people that are just going to argue with you, and they're always going to think that, you know, their experience is the only experience. And if you challenge that, you know, you'll never be right with them. So, you know, trying to kind of balance that has always been difficult. But, you know, I think that despite those things, you have to set yourself up to have support in your life, to be able to have those conversations, because it's not easy. It's not easy for Black people to have those conversations, you know, but
That's right.
Nonetheless, we do that, right? And in order to make progress, we have to do that. So having those support systems, counseling, all of that, that is very important for Black people, I think, because some of it is very heavy. And you want to make sure that you're not stressing yourself out too much in order to kind of progress your well-being and your humanity to other people, right?
Well, and that's where this exhaustion comes from, right? Like we hear so many people in the African American community say, "I'm exhausted. Enough's enough of there not being enough," and it's just that exhaustion is a result. And I don't think we can understand it, but it is that exhaustion that is a result of a compound effect. I'm a huge fan of Darren Hardy, who wrote a book called The Compound Effect. But we all kind of intuitively know what the compound effect is. But it's that compound effect of, like Jonathan mentioned, those microaggressions that you've had to deal with since you were in Hobbs and Farmington and in Texas, and now back here, where people are saying, "Boy, aren't you articulate? You are so well spoken. You know, your skin. You know, I just, there's so many things that we just can't fathom." And just the small comments, right? Like, and even as a young man at New Mexico State University, Aleli found this file with a bunch of old documents, and I'd written a paper at New Mexico State University for my sociology class or psychology class or something, and it was titled NMSU's Puerto Rican Jew Boy. And I look back at that, and it's like, Jew Boy is a derogatory moniker. But I was so accustomed to being told these things, and that I somehow embraced it as being a badge of honor. But there was a weight that comes with that too. And I just know that what you're saying is so true. And yes, you don't speak for all Black people, but I just know that after having hosted 7 weeks of beautiful Black voices, I know that there's a common thread there of that exhaustion that comes from the compound effect of those of us that have been committing these microaggressions over time.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I do want to just backdrop this all with, you know, the history of New Mexico is one where I think Black, and I've listened to other of your recordings, so I know that other people brought this up, but it's somehow overlooked in ways. And I think, you know, it's, well, they're only 3% of the population, so, you know, what have they really done or whatever. But, you know, we've done a lot in the state. We've contributed just a lot to our community. And I think that you mentioned Ray Hamilton, the New Mexico Black Lawyers Association, you know, organizations like that are always pushing us to the forefront. So you know, we're not just going to be 3% of the population. We're going to be attorneys. We're going to be judges. We're going to be politicians. You know, we're going to be in those spaces of power. And that's important. It's important to have diversity in all parts of your state, right? And so that's why I really love the New Mexico Black Lawyers Association, is because those folks that founded that organization, you know, Ray Hamilton, the Jewels, Hannah Best, they were thinking about the future of our state, right? They were thinking about mentorship for young attorneys. They were thinking about how they could get people into judgeships. They were thinking about all of this. And so they were really setting the stage to create this like very progressive Black community. And one of the people that we found out about is the first Black attorney to be admitted by the Supreme Court to the bar. And I know that Leon Howard, who works for the ACLU, did some work on investigative work on this, and Ray, and my mother-in-law, Johnny's mom, did a ton of work on trying to find, like, you know, the ancestry of this gentleman's family and where he was from and everything. And so his name was George Malone. We have named one of our scholarships after him. And he just had this amazing story. You know, he was born in Mississippi, I think in 1875. And he got married in Mississippi to Bessie Gilmore. He went to Walden University, which is a historically Black college in Tennessee. They moved to Blackdom, New Mexico, in, I believe it was.
Most people don't even know that
1910.
existed.
A lot of people don't even know that existed, right? And that's a huge, rich part of our New Mexico culture, right? So the people that will say, well, they're statistically insignificant, are people that don't know about Blackdom, right? There was an entire city of Black people in New Mexico. He was a teacher there. She was a postmistress there. He wrote to the New Mexico Supreme Court for admission to the bar. He had already become an attorney in Mississippi. And so we have the letters, you know, of support from an attorney in Roswell, from an attorney in Mississippi who said, please, you know, this person is a person of good character. And so he was admitted to the bar to practice law in 1916. And so, you know, these are the stories that people don't know about. And that's why I think it's really important that you're doing these recorded episodes, because, you know, it's important to record the stories of the people who live here and who have had experiences here, because if you don't have that, people will forget about it. And so this is really important work. And you know, there are people even closer, right? Like I said, the founders of the New Mexico Black Lawyers Association, each one of those people helped me in my journey to become who I am today, right? Helped me get jobs, wrote letters of recommendation, introduced me to people. They have all just really pushed me forward as a person. And so, and you know, that's not unique. I mean, Black people in this community are doing that all the time, you know, mentorship, scholarship, all of these things that are so important. And, you know, I just think that to say, you know, well, 3% of the population, really who we're really looking at is, you know, like Indigenous people and Hispanics and white people, right? So I think that the rich culture of New Mexico does include Black people. And my mom's actually, I don't know who she got these pictures from, but she got all of these pictures from like Hobbs in the 1950s and 60s. And they're just these gorgeous photos. I think they were taken by a professional photographer. And they're pictures of the Black community, you know, back in the 50s and 60s. And they're all just dressed to the nines. They have these like, you know, white suits on and bow ties. And it's just beautiful. And that does not need to be forgotten.
Agreed. In fact, more so, instead of not just forgetting, it should be celebrated. Let's take it to that next level. And
yeah.
And I always talk about embracing and lifting up the diversity that we have in New Mexico with our multicultural history and heritage and current setting. And I know Denise isn't a big fan of when I say embracing the community. I'm not quite sure where she's at on that. But I do say that often because I think words matter, and we've talked about tolerating. Even our New Mexico Holocaust Museum of Holocaust Intolerance, and tolerance is such a limiting word. And so when I say embracing and lifting up, I've adopted that. Denise, you can continue to school me on that. And my goodness, people are really passionate this morning. My goodness. I mean, I even got somebody that dropped the F-bomb on my page here.
Goodness.
Holy cow. Bring that passion this morning. My goodness. And
I can't, I'm not on the Facebook page right now. So I'm hoping that it's like not bad about me. I'm hoping that
it's just a lot of passion. It's just a lot of passion. Dr. Dawson, glad you're here this morning. Thanks to everybody. Jonathan, thank you for always joining me. And thanks, Ms. Aiken, for your points there. Let me just, thanks, Ms. Aiken, because it reminded me that Clarence was asking about, do you happen to know the next chapter in that Farmington story about that young girl? Do you know about the NCAA and NAACP's involvement? And of course, NAACP led and supported the family 50 years ago, 60 years ago with Emmett Till, and which didn't have a good end result, by the way, but it was the tipping point after that trial. But do you know what happened there in Farmington? A couple people have asked.
I'm not sure where the status is right now, but I do know that a professor at the law school, Professor Aranjani, just wrote a letter to it. It was an op-ed, and it went to a lot of different politicians, but about defunding the police in schools and trying to get more mental health and social workers into schools versus spending our money on police in schools. And so the New Mexico Black Lawyers Association, very, very enthusiastically signed on with that letter in support of those sorts of measures. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that specific case, but I do think that it's important to have these conversations about police in schools, right? Because you do see that escalation going on, and you hear them say in the video, well, her mom's on the way, and he's like, well, I wanna hold her, like I wanna call JPO, and just escalating the situation. She's trying to separate herself, go and sit down, and this officer is just kind of egging on and escalating the situation. And so I think that it's a really important conversation to have. And, the Journal printed that piece, that letter that Professor Aranjani and Hope Pendleton, one of our amazing Black UNM law students, wrote. And then I think they also, they had another letter from the editorial board, which was basically kind of the opposite idea of having police in schools. So I'm glad that they published the letter. That was great. I am very happy that they did that. But then to see that kind of response, I was like, well, I don't know if they got the message, but and really part of their argument was because of police, school shootings is why we need to put money into metal detectors and, guns for police. And it's just like, these things should not be in schools. We should not have metal detectors. We should not have guns in schools. Like, it's just,
I guarantee you the minute they start having teachers and educators and support staff carry guns into the schools, that's when Aleli will retire. And she's got, I think, 21 years in, and she's just mortified by that concept. I mean, I don't think she's even ever touched a gun, but she's just mortified by that concept.
Yeah, it's scary. And I think that the governor just signed the bill that's having law enforcement wear the body cams. And, if that resource officer wouldn't have been wearing a body cam, I don't even know what the conversation would have been, right? Because he says stop resisting and she's already been body slammed on the ground, right? So it's a good thing that we have, and that's not a fix, that's not the end of the conversation, but at least it's a step in the right direction, right? And so
That's exactly right.
And you mentioned it at the beginning, right? You're talking about seeing it happen, right? Seeing the killing of George Floyd, seeing this 11-year-old get body slammed, having maybe Till Mobley have her son on display, and some of those things. And you would think if people see that, they will understand how wrong it is, right? And so you just hope that people see that and they understand how wrong that is. Because if your reaction to that is then, well, they did this, or they shouldn't have done this, or actually, you shouldn't be defending that person because, they wrote a bad check or whatever, right? It's like, you're not understanding the point. But then if you see that and you have a gut reaction and you say, oh my gosh, I need to get out there and I need to change this, right? And that's what Emmett Till's mother was wanting to do. She was wanting people to get out and change things, right? And so I think that, the flip side of that is it was probably so hard for her to do that, right? To have her son, mangled body on display, right? So it's not easy. It's not easy from the Black person's perspective to do these things. And so you are giving part of your physical and mental well-being to make those things happen. And so you just hope that once it's out there, that people will not have a negative reaction to it and will not then try and defend that very behavior that's like taking the humanity away. And
absolutely well stated. And I just to put, underscore that, and that people understand what his mom went through. And remember the 14-year-old boy who was drug out of his bed from his uncle's house or one of his relatives' house in Mississippi, who he had been visiting with his cousin. And this documentary that I watched, I think it's either called The Untold Story of Emmett Till or something like that. I'll try and find that and post it. But what you have to understand is it wasn't, she was sitting with the funeral director and the funeral director said, Ms. Till, would you like an open casket or closed casket ceremony for your son? No, first of all, the sheriff, sua sponte, by himself, decided that they were going to bury that body immediately. And then she went and got that decision overturned, got the body taken over to the funeral home. The funeral director in the pine box sealed up that pine box. And Emmett's mom said, no, open that box. I want to know what's in that box. And I'm going to see it. And he said, well, I can't open the box. And she says, you got a hammer? You got a hammer, Mr. Funeral Director? And he said, what do you mean? He said, well, I want to know what's in that box. And he literally sent her home and ultimately said, come back and I'll open the box. Because I got a hammer. Of course I got a hammer. And then after she's approaching the funeral home or the church, literally 3 blocks away, she says she could smell. You can't imagine. And then ultimately she's asked, do you want this open or closed casket? And she said, no, the world needs to see what happened. And that's what started the modern civil rights movement, at least from that telling of the story. And I think that clearly that's probably maybe one of the incidents, but clearly undeniable one of the major incidents that led to the modern civil rights movement. And then now we have today's civil rights movement based on what happened to George Floyd because of cameras. Asia, we're on the hour, but I do want to just take a couple minutes, if you'll give me the grace of extending the time a little bit with me on this beautiful Sábado Gigante on Cafecito con Colón.
You know what? My dad used to watch Sábado Gigante. I know what Sábado Gigante is.
That's awesome.
Yes.
It was in my house every Saturday too. But can you speak to a little bit for our viewers, um, a little bit about being a young leader who is in a mixed marriage? We haven't had a lot of conversation about that in the last almost 7 weeks on Cafecito con Colon, but you in particular have two little check boxes, right? You're a young leader and you're in that mixed marriage. And so I'm wondering, I suspect that may have been, I would hope that that may have been a little easier journey than somebody like my mom, who married a Puerto Rican who spoke with a heavy accent and who looked very Puerto Rican, and my mom coming from a very white Jewish family where her parents were racist. I'll just tell you right now, they were racist. And that was very difficult. And then Aleli and I and her family having to embrace somebody who was not Catholic, not Filipino. But tell us what that's like for, or maybe what that's been like with you, if you'll share that with us.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Black woman. My husband is a white man. And we have a biracial son who's 7 months old, Emerson, who you mentioned. And we are very different. We grew up very differently, but we both respect each other. We were taught to respect other ideas, other people. And we have difficult conversations every day. But we're in it for the long haul. And we knew when we got married, we knew that it was not going to be easy, to have these conversations, but you have to have them. You can't shy away from them. And, now having a son, it's brought a whole nother element, a whole nother level to the conversation, right? Because I'll just tell you a fun little story. And Johnny told me that I could tell this story. So
Good.
We were camping.
Hey, Johnny. Hey, Johnny.
Somewhere with the baby.
Love you, Johnny. Yeah, there you go.
We were camping. This was before Emerson was born. We were camping outside of Carrizozo, New Mexico, where the Valley of Fires is, with the lava and that whole thing. And so we had gone into Carrizozo, and Johnny stopped at a convenience store to use the bathroom, right? And I see this cop and I'm like, he's pulling you over. Like, I think he's pulling you over. And so he drives into, Johnny drives up to the convenience store, parks in a little parking space, and gets out of the car and starts going into the convenience store to use the restroom. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, why are you getting out of the car? Oh my God, what's happening? And so I see what happens. And, the officer's like, hey, son, like, hey, don't go into I need to talk to you. And Johnny says, oh my gosh, I have to use the restroom. And the police officer just kind of chuckles and is like, ha ha ha, no, well, come back over here. And I was just thinking, that my reaction to that was very different than my husband's reaction. Wow. And it's because of our race, it's because of our gender, it's because of a lot of different things, right? But like, I would never, ever, ever do that. In that situation, I would, put my hands on the wheel. I would be as still as possible. I wouldn't make any sudden movements. And to get out of the car, I was like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen here? Like, am I going to die? Like, what's happening? But it ended up being fine. And I think it was because, my husband's white. So, that wasn't a fear for him. But, my son is Black. My son will be a Black man. And he's going to need to know that he can't do that. He can't do what Dad does, right? He doesn't have that same privilege of being able to just be who he is, right? You have to teach your Black children these things, and it's difficult, and it's going to be hard. But having those difficult conversations and talking about it and saying, we are not going to be able to tell Emerson, he is not going to be able to do that, and it's hard, and you want to make sure that at the same time that you were having those difficult conversations, that you were also not stifling their personalities, right? Because you don't want them to be like so afraid that they're not who they are. right?
Right.
And so that's difficult for me. That's difficult for me. It's just starting with Emerson, but like, how do you make sure that they're not so heavy, right? Like they're not so heavy. And sometimes I see these videos of these like kids at protests, and I think that's a good thing. I think you got to teach your kids from a young age to speak up and to be out there. But some of them, you know, it's so heavy and they're so little. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope that you're also like outside blowing bubbles and running in the grass and like, you know, getting dirty and like just doing all of these things, because racism is a heavy burden for anyone. It's heavy for adults. And it's even heavier, I think, for children. So I think there has to be a balance, right? And like, I know I'm going to get a lot of comments, and I'm not saying don't take your kids to protest, because I think that is very important. I really do. And I think having that teaching and having that idea is important. But I think also that it's important that we don't, because sometimes we forget to also humanize ourselves, right? Like give our kids the same joy that white kids have, right?
That's amazing in itself, that you have to contemplate, am I giving my children the same joy that white kids get to enjoy?
And they're also like in New Mexico, they're also going to be looked at as the only, right? And so whatever they do is going to be examined. You know, people are going to make assumptions about like I said, the whole race based on them, and that's heavy. And so you want to also make sure that they're experiencing joy.
You know, and I guess it's interesting. I appreciate you emphasizing that. I think that's something that maybe we don't think about. I suspect we don't think about. You know, Johnny will have many times, and probably already has, I suspect, because I think about even my experience with Rafael when he was little, or when I was in the Philippines with my nephews. And I'd go to the grocery store. And number one, I was like a giant because I was so much taller. And then I had this little Filipino kid with me, and they're like, you know, did you abduct that child, or what's going on? But I wonder how Johnny kind of processes what I suspect will happen if it hasn't happened, when he's out with your son, when he's out in public and he's not with you, and he's got Emerson, and people are wondering, oh, Johnny, what a wonderful white man. He's adopted a child of color.
Yeah. Huh? Well, you know what? And I think that will happen. Right now, Emerson looks exactly like Johnny. Exactly.
Does he?
Like, exactly.
But Emerson's got some color.
He does. And like I said, I think that that's going to change too as he gets older. But like I said, right now they're like little twinsies. Like Johnny put a picture up of him as a kid, and then with Emerson. And like, I don't know where I am in there. So I might be the abductee, I guess, in the situation.
That's funny.
But no, I think that will change with time. And I think that, you know, those are conversations, like I said, that we're going to have. And I think that it's hard for, you know, both of us. It will be hard for me if people think I abducted this little white baby, right? It would be hard for Johnny if someone thinks that, you know, he adopted some, you know, Black kid, right? And so I think that it's always a conversation that you have to have, and it's going to be ongoing, and it's going to be difficult, but you can't shy away from it. You just have to keep having those conversations and you know, hopefully growing from them.
Asia, we have certainly grown from this hour and 10 minutes that you've given me. I've certainly grown, and I appreciate it. And Patrick Barrett has made comments about how much you've impacted his life. Denise says that we took her to church this morning, and she never misses. So, well, and she's just calling you out to keep preaching. And I just, that's a high compliment, because Denise doesn't miss. She's with me every morning. And so know that this has been a particularly powerful time together. And I'm going to let you close it out with, if I didn't give you an opportunity to talk about something, or maybe share a message that I didn't give you a chance to share, I want to do that and let you just finish out this Sábado Gigante on Cafecito con Colón.
Okay, so I do have something that I want to mention, and I hope I don't take too long. But you mentioned George Floyd at the beginning of this and his murder. And so I wanted to end with a poem by my favorite person, Maya Angelou. And, you know, I was so lucky when I went to Wake Forest, I got to take her class that she taught there, because she taught at Wake Forest. And that's part of the reason that I ended up going there, was because I loved Maya Angelou and I was like, I am going to take her class. And so it was just amazing. You know, anything that you think of Maya, Maya Angelou, it was that, right? Maya Angelou is amazing. And she called everyone by their last names by the second day of class. She knew everyone's last name. And that's why I stopped myself when I said Maya, because she was very much about respect and you know, and she gave young people respect too. She called us, you know, Mrs. Brooks, you know, Miss Brooks, you know, Mr. So-and-so, because it was respectful. And, you know, when George Floyd died, that was May 25th. And Maya Angelou died May 28th of 2014. And so I said, you know, I don't get on Facebook that much, but when I was on Facebook right after the George Floyd killing, a post that I had posted from when Maya Angelou passed away was like my memory, right? They give you memories from like 6 years ago, whatever, right? So what I had posted back then was my memory. And so, you know, I was feeling really sad and depressed and upset, and so I was reminded of this poem because it's a poem that I posted, and it came up, and so I'm gonna read it. It's kind of a long poem, but I think it's a good way to end the conversation. It's a poem called "A Brave and Startling Truth," and she wrote it to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the UN. And so I'm just gonna read it. So it
Great.
says, and I'm no Ebony Isis Booth, so it's not good, you know. It's just it's gonna be flat. Okay. Perfect. So we, this people on a small and lonely planet, traveling through casual space, past aloof stars, across the way of indifferent suns, to a destination where all signs tell us it is possible and imperative that we learn a brave and startling truth. And when we come to it, to the day of peacemaking, when we release our fingers from fists of hostility and allow the pure air to cool our palms, when we come to it, when the curtain falls on the minstrel show of hate and faces suited with scorn are scrubbed clean, when battlefields and coliseum no longer rake our unique and particular sons and daughters up with the bruised and bloody grass to lie in identical plots in foreign soil. When the rapacious storming of the churches, the screaming racket in the temples have ceased, when the pennants are waving gaily, when the banners of the world tremble stoutly in the good, clean breeze, when we come to it, when we let the rifles fall from our shoulders and children dress their dolls in flags of truce, when landmines of death have been removed and the aged can walk into evenings of peace, when religious ritual is not perfumed by the incense of burning flesh, and childhood dreams are not kicked awake by nightmares of abuse. When we come to it, then we will confess that not the pyramids with their stones set in mysterious perfection, nor the gardens of Babylon hanging as eternal beauty in our collective memory, not the Grand Canyon kindled into delicious color by Western sunsets, nor the Danube flowing its blue soul into Europe, not the sacred peak of Mount Fuji stretching to the rising sun, neither Father Amazon nor Mother Mississippi, who without favor nurture all creatures in the depths and on the shores. These are not the only wonders of the world. When we come to it, we, this people on this minuscule and kithless globe, who reach daily for the bomb, the blade, and the dagger, yet who petition in the dark for tokens of peace. We, this people on this mote of matter, in whose mouths abide cankerous words, which challenge our very existence. Yet out of those same mouths come songs of such exquisite sweetness that the heart falters in its labor and the body is quieted into awe. We, this people on this small and drifting planet, whose hands can strike with such abandon that in a twinkling, life is sapped from the living, yet those same hands can touch with such healing, irresistible tenderness, that the haughty neck is happy to bow and the proud back is glad to bend out of such chaos, of such contradiction, we learn that we are neither devils nor divines. When we come to it, we, this people on this wayward floating body created on this earth, of this earth, have the power to fashion for this earth a climate where every man and every woman can live freely without sanctimonious piety, without crippling fear. When we come to it, we must confess that we are the possible, we are the miraculous, the true wonder of this world. That is when and only when we come to it.
Asia Brooke, you are miraculous.
Thank
Thank you for sharing that poem with us. Very beautiful. I posted a link to Maya Angelou actually delivering that poem at the United Nations.
Yeah.
So folks, you can
she can do
listen.
it way better than I can. So.
I knew you were going to say that. Cut it out. Cut it out. Cut it out. You delivered it beautifully, and I'm grateful you did. And I am grateful for you. I'm grateful that you are a beautiful part of our history and a beautiful part of the leadership of my bar, the New Mexico State Bar. And thank you for sharing so openly and comfortably with us on this Saturday morning on Cafecito. You are cherished, respected, and you make a difference. So thank you for impacting our community.
Well, thank you, Brian. I appreciate you for inviting me on, and keep being you, and keep having these discussions. And it's so important, like I said, to chronicle our Black voices. So I do appreciate that.
Well, you bet. And I can't wait to have Brandy on Monday. She is an incredible young leader. I think she may even be younger than Ms. Asia here, Mrs. Brooks, and she is really a dynamic human being, and she does a great job at the University of New Mexico leading, and I think you will enjoy that on Monday. And I have enjoyed every minute of our hour and 18 minutes together. You call on me anytime I can be helpful, Asia. I'm in your corner. I'm in Johnny's corner.
I know.
And just call on me anytime.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate you too. Everybody have a great weekend. Reach out to a few folks who are in isolation and remind them that they're not alone. We are isolated, but we are not alone. I want to encourage you to go out there, get that fresh air, do your exercise, but wear your mask. It is a new order that will come into effect on Monday. I have implemented it today. I canceled my mentee meeting that was scheduled to be inside a restaurant this morning, and I relocated to an outdoor patio so that I could immediately comply with the governor's orders, healthcare directive, and let's get through this COVID-19 pandemic together. But let's be super aware of one another's mental health and well-being, and reach out to those folks, particularly our elderly, particularly those who struggle with mental stability and that are dealing with behavioral health issues, and who may be in a heavy time because we're having this conversation, these uncomfortable conversations. So reach out in particular to those folks that have the compound effect on this 11th day of July, and how heavy it might be for them to be hearing all these uncomfortable conversations, because it's about a world they've been living in for a lifetime. Reach out to them, tell them that they're in isolation, but they're not alone. Tell them that Brian and Asia send their love, and make it a beautiful Saturday. Have a great weekend, folks. We will see you on Monday with Brandy, and look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today, and God bless each and every one of you. I love you. I love you, New Mexico. Bye-bye. Bye, Asia.
Bye.